Way to save the season to throw. Fire and down! Incomplete down at the goal line by San Diego. Tomlinson off the left side. Tomlinson sidestep. Hello, history books. They have to here's Sproles. Sproles inside the 10, inside the 5, and the Chargers win the game.
Finally, an after-hours W here for the first time this season. It took us 3 weeks, but we're here. The 1-2 Chargers. They beat the Minnesota Vikings in Minnesota. It's a good feeling to do a winning podcast. But boy, do these Chargers find a way to make it tough to watch every single Sunday. I texted you guys that I'm going to be talking to my doctor on Monday about getting some heart medication, and boy, man, they never make it look easy.
No, they're trying to kill us. I'm convinced.
I'm convinced. I'm right there with you guys. I don't think that we're overdoing it here. There's definitely a plot against us.
Yeah, I do think so. I think it's definitely about us for sure. But all right, so I think this is probably a good place to start. All right, so Jason in the chat. Can we talk about how Staley almost cost us the game? Now, let's talk about this fourth down call because I think that's what everybody's been talking about. They went for it on their own 30. It was late in the game. It was fourth and less than a yard, call it 1 yard. They decided to go for it. They handed off to Joshua Kelly. They did not get it. They gave the Vikings a short field, gave them the opportunity to go and win that game. How did you guys feel about that fourth down decision? Was it the right move? Or was the play calling bad? Or was it all bad? What is your guys' take on that, Craig?
So I didn't have a problem with him going for it. As a matter of fact, I thought that he should, just based on the defensive performance. They were out of timeouts. I understand that you want to maybe have them drive the length of the field. That's the rationale behind punting. But what gave you the idea that they would be able to stop them? And then in this scenario, also for me, it's more so about the play call as opposed to the fact that they went for it. He was in a no-win situation. If he didn't go for it on fourth down and punted, they were going to give him crap about it. Somebody would. There would be, you know how everyone is about Staley right now. It's a hot button topic. For me, it's the play call. You've got a 6'6", 240-pound quarterback, and the play that's all the rage right now, specifically by the Eagles, is the tush push. So why not line up with said quarterback with your running backs behind him and allow them to just push him from behind for that less than a yard, as opposed to lining up for a fullback dive that essentially we'll get to this later about the running game, but there was nothing in the running game that showed you that would be successful. So you were going to line up and force a play in a running game when you haven't been able to run the game all day. Run the ball, all day. And that wouldn't have made sense to me. So I didn't have a problem with the play actually going for it on fourth down. It's the play call that I took issue with.
I'm kind of torn on this because I'm kind of looking at it from a different perspective, which is if you can't stop them from driving the full length of the field to score a touchdown, what makes you think you're going to protect a 4-point lead if you don't get the first down?
It's just like they drew it up, Jamie. Kenneth Murray sacked to end the game. Just like they did it. They drew it up.
They're averaging 1 yard a carry for the game. And they're running the ball with Joshua Kelly, who once again looked basically blind for most of the game today. On a key fourth down, I really didn't like the play call. It seemed like they had a little toss set up for Davis potentially as a second option. I don't know why they didn't go that route because he was one-on-one with a linebacker. But I don't know, man. Giving them a short field, the way they're dialing up explosive plays. If this was a couple years ago and going forward on fourth down was still part of their identity and this was still who they were, then I'd probably feel differently about it. But they've established over the last 2 years that this is not who they are anymore. So I got a problem with it. I mean, I know you guys both you guys both think that it was the right play, but man, I think you got to kick it deep, rely on your best unit, arguably your special teams to set you up with a long field and make them manage the clock and make the plays to get the ball down the field, because I don't know. They weren't running the ball well. It just didn't seem like the right move to me.
You were right. I had to look that up. Joshua Kelly averaged 1.1 yard per carry today.
Yep.
He had a long of 4. 11 carries for 12 yards. Boy. And Spiller, 2 carries for 7 yards. But man, yeah, Joshua Kelly has not looked good. He looked much better with Eckler on the field, and they were doing that kind of two-headed monster role. But so I, like Craig, I'm with the call. With going for it on 4th down. I think what made Staley so good his first year was those type of calls. I think you want to do the QB sneak. I don't think you want to do that draw play. But what they did do, which I want to go QB sneak, period. But what I did like about that play is that's the exact same play they ran on 4th down against Miami, where they pitched it to Darius Davis. So they faked the pitch and gave it to Joshua Kelly. So to set that play up like, oh, we've seen this, they're going to pitch it to 12 back there. That, to me, looked like a nice little misdirection. But, again, Joshua Kelly hasn't ran the ball good all day today. And J.K. Scott, he didn't punt all that. Well, his first punt today was terrible. They gave him a short field. They were like at the 44 or something to start their drive before Alohi Gilman was able to strip it. But I am all for going for it there on 4th down. I want the QB sneak. I want a different play call. I did understand why they would call that, just because they ran that same formation and same play and got it on the pitch to Darius Davis and kind of tried to give him a little misdirection there. But, yeah, I'd like to see QB sneak there, and I am totally okay with them going for it there, especially because they had to score a touchdown there, which makes it a little bit harder than the obvious field goal to tie it, which I think if it was 3, Staley probably punts it there.
Not only that, but my question, let me double check here. Where did they go for it? What was where were they in the field? I know they were
on the 24, trying to gain the 25.
So this is my point here. This is my counterpoint, Jamie. So they actually played relatively decent red zone defense. So if you're giving them the full length of the field to work with, it seems like they were getting the explosives off. You got less of the field to work with, and you can contain them within getting to the point of the red zone. Then you might actually have a better chance of getting a stop as opposed to letting up some humongous, 50+ yard Justin Jefferson touchdown where he, splits the safety in the corner and breaks away. I just much rather give them the shorter field, which the Chargers seem to have had an okay time with here. I mean, of course, it's how they ended up winning the game, but some of that can be attributed to the Vikings. But I think their red zone defense was actually not terrible today. I'd probably feel better about giving them the shorter field and defending it because I've shown that I might be able to come up with a play or a turnover because I've proven that so far in the game, as opposed to giving them the whole field and maybe beating us on 1 or 2 humongous plays.
Yeah, I just think for me, you've had, I don't know how many 3rd and 1s, 3rd and 2s they had where they passed the ball instead of running it. This is a team that wants to be a downhill rushing attack, but they don't seem to be willing to commit to it. It just doesn't seem like it's part of their identity right now. So I don't know. I wasn't a fan. For me, I just feel like you play the odds and you make them go the length of the field. I understand what you guys are saying. I just too risky at that point. It's just not part of their identity anymore.
Yeah, maybe it was different. I mean, obviously you disagree, but I'm with Craig here. I think it was the right play or the right call to go for it on 4th. Let's talk about, so we talked about that stuff. How did you guys feel about, because there was a lot of guys that stood out. Let's just talk about a couple of them. Jamie. And by the way, Chris thinks you changed, by the way, Jamie.
Uh-oh.
You used to be the guy who would be like, that's the right call. Not anymore. Not today.
Not today. I'll call it. I'll say it's the right call when I think it's the right call. I just didn't think that was. So you want to talk about a couple guys who stood out?
Give me one.
I mean, on offense, the easy one is Herbert because he was super Herbert this week. I thought the most impressive part for him, actually, there were a couple. One was they did a really good job of adjusting to the blitz at the line of scrimmage. They were doing a good job of identifying where it was coming from, sliding the protection, and giving Herbert time to throw. 2, he was masterful in the pocket. Outside of one play where it took him a little bit too long to get rid of the ball, and Donnell Hunter had a strip sack about midway through the third quarter, Herbert seemed to have eyes in the back of his head. It seemed like he knew where everybody was coming from at all times. And he'd just get that. It was like Rivers-esque. He'd just get that little shuffle to his left or slide up in the pocket just a little bit or shuffle to his right. And he made some throws on the run, dimes. I mean, there was one to Keenan, I think it was in the fourth quarter. What was it, on 3rd and 20, where he's rolling left and he stops and slings it sidearm back to the right for a first down. I mean, the way he manipulated the pocket and managed the pocket today was a thing of beauty. And then you're starting to see, one, him identifying blitzes and adjusting them at the line of scrimmage, which is really encouraging. And two, there were throws that he was making against cover 2 and cover 6 that he typically does not make that were really impressive. There was one early in the game for like a 15-yard gain where he layered the ball right over the corner, right in front of the safety for Keenan on the sideline. There were 3 or 4 throws in particular that I remember watching live thinking, oh my God, I didn't think he was willing to make that throw. And the other one that stood out to me was the one to Palmer that set up for the touchdown right before the half, where it set up the touchdown drive right before halftime, I should say, where they're blitzing, Herbert's dropping back, he throws it off the back foot, just throws it up for Palmer down the sideline, lets him run underneath it, and he beats the corner one-on-one. There were 5 or 6 throws today that probably even more than that were just phenomenal. So Herbert was amazing. The way he handled that defense, that's a defensive scheme that he had struggled with in the past. And the way that he handled today and diced it up was a thing of beauty. Obviously, you can't talk about the offense without talking about Keenan because he was ridiculous. 17 catches today? Just absurd. I mean,
it's a franchise record.
I mean, catching the ball on the run, yak opportunities, middle of the field, boundary, underneath, intermediate, deep. He did everything. He was amazing. So those 2 guys really stood out. And I've got more, but I'll let you guys talk and I'll get back to mine later.
Yeah, go ahead, Greg.
Yeah, I think we're going to end up kind of basically piggybacking on a few of these guys because, I mean, how can you not mention number 1, Herbert? And Jamie's pretty much already said it, but I mean, he gave you every throw you wanted to see. I mean, number 1, there was the accuracy. So, of course, like the sidearm TD to Parham off that RPO in the first quarter, pretty ridiculous. It's like a shortstop throw. It's like he was turning 2. It was beautiful. The way that he actually maneuvered that around the defensive end and got it out there perfectly. That's not a very easy throw to make, specifically with a football, by the way. So then you've got the pocket presence, just avoiding pressure on the inside and on the perimeter. So like you said, Jamie, manipulating the pocket, knowing when to step up, having feel. Like that's a talent. Being able to feel pressure and knowing exactly how much time you have, where you need to maneuver to find the open windows and create those, magnificent throws that he was getting off. But because the protection wasn't always perfect today, but the Vikings also do blitz a lot. And that was the thing that was concerning me because in key moments for the last 2 weeks, when teams would blitz, they weren't picking it up well. And it seemed like they had a really good game plan for it throughout the duration of the game. All right, now I'm going to say a bunch of pause-worthy things, so guys, get ready. There were hole shots into vacant zones. So, like you said, cover 2, cover 6, finding those openings to layer the ball into, definitely throws that he was really, he'd think twice about it. You could see him in past games. He'd pat the ball. The opening would be there, but he wouldn't trust himself to get it there. No hesitation this time around. He's getting the ball there with in enough time and anticipation to allow the receivers to catch the ball and then make plays after the catch. You've got the missile throws, like the second TD to Parham before halftime to go up 14-10. You look at the angle from like the actual, not TV copy, but from behind Herbert, like it wasn't necessarily all 22, but it's, it was lowered to the field. The linebacker was literally there. He was in front of that ball. He makes a move and it whizzes right by him into Parham's hands. And you don't make that pass unless you have a very special arm. That's significant arm talent. And there are only maybe 2 or 3 other guys in the league, maybe 2 that can make that throw. So the talent was on full display and the patience to really allow receivers to reach their windows behind linebackers in zones. You can get really antsy waiting for those crosses to develop, but he wasn't. He had all the presence of mind to stand in the pocket, maneuver, and allow those guys to get behind the linebacker, and in some cases, throw them open into the zone to where they can take those balls and make plays. I really really appreciated, because we've been asking for this for years now, Parham's usage in the red zone. You got to see what it means to have a 6'8", big body tight end with an insane wingspan, and they utilize that today. I mean, even if you don't get the ball to him up high to where he has to jump, I think ideally that's what people think. But if you get the ball out in front of him, he can reach far enough away from his body, away from defenders who don't have that type of length to make those plays. So they made a concerted effort to get Parham involved in the red zone. And I really appreciated seeing that. And of course, Keenan is out here aging like a fine Cabernet. I mean, at this rate, good luck with like attempting to justify letting him go in favor of Mike Williams, because his style of play has a much longer shelf life. And if he continues on this trajectory, it's going to be a really tough decision potentially to make come the end of the season when you're looking at that wide receiver room and how much you're paying them, because I think a lot of people just assume that since Mike's the younger guy that he would be the one, and especially since they just paid him, they keep him around. But how do you let this go? He has the type of game that will allow him to play at a relatively high level, probably another 2 to 3 years. And Mike is high risk, high reward, because he's a high flyer. He's a 50-50 ball guy, and he just has a tendency for injury. And other than that, I mean, there are a couple other names, we'll get around to them, but those are the 3 guys that stood out for me.
Somebody mentioned it in the chat, but they had the numbers wrong. So the Vikings blitzed Justin Herbert 40 of his 50 dropbacks today. It was his second highest blitz rate, which was 82% today. He averaged 2.2 seconds time to throw. It was his first game ever in his career under 2.4. And so his completion percentage was 16% higher, which is a career high. It was a real masterful performance, really. I mean, the layered throws. They had a correction. It was 41 of 50 dropbacks. He was blitzed. So they brought the house. They corrected it since 2 hours ago. They brought the house today, and Herbert, I mean, at times didn't have a lot to go with, and there were a lot of bubble screens and stuff today. I know we were eventually going to get to this, but I mean, Joshua Kelly couldn't get anything done on the ground. I didn't realize it was as bad as Jamie said, which was 1 yard per carry.
It was bad.
But it was bad. I knew it was bad, not that bad. So they were using that bubble screen, those quick outs, just as kind of an extension of the run game. They'd get receivers out in front to block for Keenan or Mike, or they ran one to Joshua Palmer. Quinton had one today. And Gerald Everett had one today, I believe, as well. A couple, I think. So they were just using that as an extension of the run game, and they were doing that all game long, and it was getting boring. They were getting like 3 to 5 yards a pop, and they would bring up like 3rd and short constantly, and then they'd have to figure out how to get to that first down. There weren't any shots downfield, and then you see it was just Kellen Moore setting them up, and they do that bubble screen to Keenan Allen, who then throws it to Mike Williams down the sideline for the touchdown. It was that double throw. It was amazing. Keenan Allen was definitely amazing today. He had his most receptions today. He had a career high in yards today too. Justin Herbert had a career day today. He went 127 completions without an interception or something. He broke some kind of record today with that. Completions without an interception. He was just amazing. And the layered throws that Justin Herbert made today, I don't know. I can't figure out how Parham made that catch on that 4th down. That ball was as fast as it could possibly be in a very short distance. And he got it past the linebacker, past the cornerback, and still put it in Parham's hands, who you saw on the sideline. I don't know if you guys saw the replay, but he was like, the ball was just on me. Like he was mouthing, like it was just here. And like all of a sudden it was there, which was
Like,
great.
Catch it or die.
Yeah, I know. I know. Or get your head taken off. Good thing he's wearing a helmet. But yeah, Keenan was great today. Mike Williams' injury doesn't look all that good, getting carted off like that, not being able to put weight on it. We'll see how that goes. Herbert was amazing. Parham with the 2 touchdowns was good. Defensively, I thought Jamie and I talked about it before we got on here. Lohi Gilman really played a good game today. We got the he had a few missed tackles in this game. It wasn't a perfect game for him, but man, he was always trying to rip that ball loose. He got one from Hawkinson. Should have had a second, which I'm sure we'll get to at some point, that he didn't get the fumble on. But Alohi was flying around pretty tight in coverage. I thought he missed a couple tackles in the run game, but other than that, I felt like he was really, really active today.
Yeah. For me, I think I mentioned it. I used this phrase when we were talking before we went live, but we've been looking for the defense to show some fight for the last couple of weeks, and it just seemed like nobody was willing to show fight. And all Gilman did today was show fight. If he was on the bottom of a pile, he was trying to rip the ball out. That play, you already alluded to it, but the fumble that wasn't a fumble because they blew the play dead, which was complete horseshit, by the way. He was on the backside. He chased it down from behind, and he wasn't even worried about the tackle because somebody else had Matson stood up. He just went right after the ball. That was his first instinct, was to go after the ball. And he had a couple big hits. He had a couple hits inside the red zone, I think, that stopped a couple of drives. And he was just playing hard and playing physical, and he fought every snap. And he's not a super talented guy, in my opinion. He doesn't wow with athleticism. He's not a guy he's going to make a ton of plays in coverage, but he damn near ended the game with a pick after the failed fourth down conversion, when he broke on a ball that was thrown to Hawkinson a little bit late. He should have had 2 fumble recoveries. He had a couple real physical tackles. I mean, Gilman was all over the field, and he was the guy who I felt like was providing the energy and the spark for the defense. So he was fantastic. And I also thought Sebastian Joseph Day was really, really good in this game. It seemed like he was constantly in Kirk Cousins' face, constantly hitting him. The Chargers had 13 quarterback hits today. They wound up with 4 sacks. Sebastian Joseph Day had 1 of them, and I think he hit the quarterback twice. Finished with 2 tackles for loss. Had a huge tackle for loss to start off that drive at the end of the game to set them back behind the sticks. Sebastian Joseph Day might have just played his best game as a Charger, because he was all over the field. He was in the backfield all day long, and their game plan with the games and the stunts to get pressure in Cousins' face up the middle early on was, it might have been their best pass rush game plan they've had since Staley's been here. It was really good.
Yeah. We're going to rattle off a lot of the same names because, you got to speak to the guys that performed. But I would call Alohi Gilman an opportunist. All effort and hustle, but he's definitely an opportunist. He has a plan whenever he's going to attack a ball carrier, especially in a crowd. We saw this just last year as well. It happened in the Dolphins game. Now, the end result there, not so great. We're going to have to relive that fumble play. But this is something he does. He's almost like a poor man's Tyrann Mathieu, like young Honey Badger. He's someone who's always attempting to make plays on the ball, and he may not get you a bunch of picks, but if he's in the vicinity and there's an opportunity to knock a ball out, jar it loose, take it away, he's going to do it. That first strip, that was like a Debo from Friday, like that's my bike punk strip. Like he literally like jacked him for the ball. It was hilarious, but I loved it. Of course, he should have had 2 forced fumbles. That pass breakup on TJ Hawkinson, the physicality that he played with on that play really made me have a different level of appreciation for him, because although he's not a big guy, and that's a larger body tight end that he essentially, threw caution to the wind, sacrificed his body to go in there and jar that ball loose. That fourth quarter breakup was clutch. And also just played more into the fact that they did play, like I mentioned before, some pretty decent red zone defense, but he contributed to that a lot. With regard to Thule, did the Chargers get a steal here in the second round? There's a lot of what he's showing right now that I didn't necessarily see on the USC tape. I saw the effort. He didn't look like a phenomenal athlete, and I'm not saying that now, but his burst and ability to get skinny between like guards and tackles to create pressure, I didn't see that on tape. He seemed like more of like just a bull rush guy, but he's actually utilizing some finesse to create pressure. And if he's not getting the sacks, he's assisting into sacks. So essentially what he is a disruptor. And that's what the Chargers were missing on the defensive front, because if it wasn't Joey, and Khalil, not the Khalil of old, but if it wasn't Joey, then essentially we were searching for someone else. And now we found him, and he's doing it consistently. And he's only 21, and this is his 3rd game in the NFL. So the Chargers absolutely got a guy with this one. And look, man, we just got to say it. Kenneth Murray looks like a serviceable linebacker, at least for the last 2 weeks. It hasn't been perfect, but one of the things that he's done really well outside of playing with physicality, because before it's like I would consider it blind physicality. It's like a dog chasing his tail for the majority of the time for the first few years of his career. But for the last 2 games, he's looked somewhat disciplined. But what I'm really happy about is his click and close when he's covering the pass. He's closing violently. And when I'm saying he's attacking guys when they catch the ball, they feel him when he's coming downhill on those tackles. Now, still a little concerned about his one-on-one open field tackle when he has to square someone up and they can actually see him, but he's working towards that. But attacking the hole against the run, getting downhill, and just laying into people, the effort is there. And now you're seeing the technique starting to improve. So defensively, those are kind of the 3 dudes that stood out to me for the most part. But I mean, seeing Kenneth Murray start to succeed and then close the game out, I mean, I think we're living in the upside down now. This is definitely something I wasn't expecting.
Yeah. He was not perfect today either, but Kenneth Murray definitely made his presence known a couple times. I mean, he made a pretty big hit in the run game. Obviously, had the interception to seal it, but Sebastian Joseph Day, just to echo you guys, great game today. Was really quiet for the first 2 games, and everybody was talking about, there's this big names on defense. You look at the defense and it should be performing a lot better than it was. And 2 years ago, they went all in free agency to bring Brandon Staley's defense here. And Sebastian Joseph Day stepped up and he finally shined a little bit this season. First 2 games pretty quiet, but was really, really good today. I think he had 2 tackles for a loss today. He was really good. We talked about Kenneth Murray, but Thule, and I'll eventually learn how to say his last name, but Thule is probably, yes, the steal of the draft, if not like getting close to the running of Defensive Player of the Year. He's leading all rookies in sacks right now with 2. I mean, if you think about, because we had talked about during the draft podcast, just how amazing this group of pass rushers were in this draft class. We had Will McDonald, Nolan Smith, Tyree Wilson, Will Anderson, Miles Murphy, Keon White, BJ Ojolari. There was like a ton of guys, Lucas Van Ness. Like there was a bunch of guys that were supposed to be like double-digit sack leaders like immediately. And Thule, the guy who's kind of the tweener, who is is the youngest rookie in the NFL, is right now exceeding expectations. And the matchup of having Bosa next to Thule looks almost unstoppable through 2 weeks. They wreck shop last week, and we're looking at a pitch count for Bosa right now. But in full time, letting those 2 play next to each other on third down, the Chargers have something there. That is an absolute like game killer, drive stopper. And Jamie had mentioned earlier about the pass rush, the way in which they dialed it up on third down. I mean, they were like 1 of 13 or something going into the third quarter. On third down, they could not get it going on third down. And a lot of that was because of the pressure. And a big part of that was Thule, because he was just amazing today. He had a sack today too, a tackle for a loss. Thule was amazing. Just in the backfield all day.
Yeah, he, like Craig said, he's showing some things that I didn't think really showed up on tape. The explosiveness that I really didn't think was there on tape. The power. I mean, there was one pass rush that I think he finished for a sack where he basically forklifted Brian O'Neill and carried him back into Kirk Cousins' lap. And that was definitely something you didn't see a lot of on tape. He was winning, they were lining him up in the A gap, but basically as a linebacker and having him blitz for the A gap a lot. And he was having a lot of success doing that in college. Most of his other sacks in college were effort coverage type sacks. Now he's just winning, and he's winning in ways that I really didn't think that he would, or maybe could, this early in the season or this early in his career. So he's been amazing. He's a guy that I'm looking forward to going back and watching again, just because he's making plays in the run game. He's getting to the quarterback. He's affecting the quarterback when he isn't getting there. Like Craig said, if he isn't getting home, he's helping somebody else get home. The defensive line right now is playing good team defense. They're drawing up a good game plan for them. They're finding ways to get free rushers at the quarterback. And when they're getting there, they're finishing. So the pass rush as a whole was really, really good today. The third down plan was fantastic. They really were. I mean, they pounded Kirk Cousins. They said at one point during the game that Cousins had been hit 19 times through his first 2 games. They hit him 13 times today. That is amazing. I mean, that's borderline. I hate to use this phrase because I know I'll get killed for it, but that's borderline like defensive guru type stuff. You're talking about
let's go
dialing up a game plan and executing it,
mastermind,
and getting after the quarterback. Now, there's a lot of other things that are going wrong behind the defensive line right now, and it's one game against a pretty suspect offensive line. But they did a good job of taking advantage of the matchups that they had and finding ways to get guys to the quarterback today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, we dogged them because they win in Tennessee and they had a patchwork offensive line and couldn't get much of anything going. And then they took advantage of a really bad offensive line today and definitely made it count. Because you saw Cousins was just ducking. You saw him throw it. There was that intentional grounding where he just threw it into the ground, didn't know where he was going. And there were other times where he just felt like he was about to get pressured and would just throw it and it would be incomplete. There were a lot of phantom rushes that he felt like pressure was coming all day long, and it really affected him throughout this game.
And, they had some coverage busts today, but I also noticed, and I'm going to pull it up here because I want to double check the numbers. I think they broke up like 9 passes today. They were around the football a lot today.
8 pass deflections today.
8. I knew it was something 7 or 8, something like that.
Yeah.
And Asante had 4 of those, I think.
2.
2? I thought it was more than that. Anyway, they were around the football a lot. They were getting their hands on the football. They were getting to Cousins. They were hitting Cousins. And I think that had a lot to do with how the game ended, too, because he could feel that pressure. He knew guys were coming after him, even when they weren't necessarily there, and he was making some questionable decisions. And they finally they dropped a couple other interception opportunities. They finally made one count at the end of the game.
Yep. Give them happy feet in the pocket. That's what happens when you're getting that type of pressure, and it tends to pay dividends later in closer games, especially when you have to pass the ball to either get closer and score, tie it up, or take a lead. You absolutely have to be able to build that rhythm and confidence in the pocket, and they didn't allow for that all game long. What you were talking about, Jamie, with regard to Thule basically forklifting the tackle, he had a play that was very similar to that last week against a guard. I can't remember who that was for the Titans, but he essentially just kind of like long-armed him back into the pocket and almost into the quarterback. So it's something that he's doing consistently. The power was something that I saw, not to that degree, but it's just the full package, man, like all the way around, essentially being more explosive now. I know that he's playing maybe a little bit lighter than what he played at USC. I can't recall what he did at his pro day where he was weight-wise, but I think he was down significantly, like 15 to 20 pounds. And that's what I was curious about him going into the season at. What would his playing weight be? But whatever he's at now seems perfect because he's still able to set a solid edge and he's able to get after the quarterback. And he's taking on interior and offensive tackles. So, I mean, the power is there. He's not lacking anything right now. So the Chargers might actually have a stud on their hands. And I'm looking forward to seeing him further develop.
Yeah, Peter mentioned it, but it's like 30 pounds lighter than it was at USC.
Mm. I know USC had him listed at 290. I don't think he ever really played at 290. I think that
he didn't look that big. He didn't. You
can't pay attention to any of those things that the colleges put out.
Yeah,
that's why you got to go. You got to go to the combine.
Yeah, he's probably 15 to 20 pounds lighter. There's no way he was playing.
Here's the thing, though, and guys, preface this by saying, I don't know, this might sound off color, but Polynesian guys kind of tend to carry their weight a little bit better than others. Sometimes they weigh a little bit heavier. It's like they're just denser, and in most cases. And Thule may not have been 290, but I would not be surprised if he was playing like around 280-ish or something like that. I wouldn't be shocked. But yeah, they absolutely do like exaggerate weight.
Oh, they always pay.
They love it. Weight and height.
Same with those pro day 40 numbers. Those are always lower than normal. We haven't talked about this yet. From Ivan Georges, what do you think about J.C. Jackson getting benched today? Healthy scratch.
I think it's a message that had to be sent to everybody. I got no problem with it. He was not playing well. He was making mental mistakes. He was making physical mistakes. And you can't have that. You can't have one of your highest paid defenders out there killing you consistently. So I'm sure it was a tough pill for him to swallow, and not an easy decision to make for the coaches. But Good on them for benching one of their quote unquote stars when he isn't playing well.
I'm just confused. Number one, about the timing. Is this something that they let him know just before the game? Did they just keep this under wraps all week? If it was the plan going into today, but really and truly, I don't think he played all that poorly last week, right? I don't recall him being beat very often. I think I remember him giving up maybe like two to three catches, nothing huge. But unless this is something that happened during practice this week, I can't see what he showed last week that would lead them to believe he wouldn't be prepared to play this week.
Well, they benched him last week.
Yeah, I was going to say I'm 99% sure they benched him like midway through the game last week.
Yeah, they did.
He gave up a couple big plays and they pulled him off the field.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought maybe I'm getting confused with the Dolphins game.
Yeah. So yeah, and he was bad against Miami, and then they benched him halfway through the game last week. But I know we've talked about it here. I don't know if this may be an injury thing, but Staley said that they felt like the players that were on the field were the best ones to give them a chance to win. So that doesn't sound like it's an injury related thing, because initially this morning, it just felt like once I heard that, it's like, he did rush back to get to playing week 1, which was really fast for his recovery time, which was great for him, but maybe he wasn't fully healed yet. I don't know, but it feels like right now it's more of a performance issue than it is an injury issue.
Yeah. I mean, if you're sitting here saying that you think that Jasir Taylor gives you a better shot at winning, whether he's playing inside or outside, than JC Jackson does, then that kind of tells you a lot about what they feel about how JC's playing right now.
Yeah. And does it hurt to at least have him suited up in the chance that one of those three get injured? Or are you okay with Dean Leonard, playing corner?
That's what really threw me for a loop. The fact that they scratched him all together. Now,
like
not having him start,
yeah,
okay, but just we're going to sit you down this week.
Yeah.
That's something, I don't know. It feels like it's got to be more than just what we saw from last week, because again, I think I saw it in the chat. Someone mentioned he gave up like 3 receptions for 17 yards. I just don't remember what he did last week that was that egregious to where he would not suit up at all this week. I mean, if he got pulled, he got pulled. I just don't recall that. But man, I mean, to have him not suit up at all, there's something else that feels like it's going on there more than just you didn't play great, so we're just going to sit you this week.
Yeah, like benching him is one thing. Like, hey, you're not good enough to start, but he's not good enough to even be depth, like a bottom of the depth chart corner guy. He's better in a hat and street clothes on the sideline. That's either sending a message thing and or there's more to an injury thing.
They're definitely sending a message.
Well, probably both. Yeah, it could.
You don't bench a $20 million cornerback in the second year of his contract unless you're trying to send a message. Yeah. And correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't Michael Davis vocal this week about the cornerback rotations and coming on and off the field and having a hard time finding a rhythm? So I wonder if maybe that played into a little bit, where they're looking at things thinking they need to choose between one or the other, or the rotations are hurting. And I don't know, but they're clearly trying to send a message.
Yeah, he absolutely mentioned that after the game last week. It's just, man, if you were willing to sit, your $20 million cornerback in a matchup where you knew the Vikings were going to be airing the ball out, and essentially you brought him there to be that guy. And of course, he's still recovering from that gruesome injury from last year. So I don't believe he's the JC of old, but yeah, something's definitely up. If it's the performance, then that's one thing. But if you're sending a message to the team, that's okay. I get it. If you're not performing well, you'll sit. But the thing is, you're going to have to keep that same energy across the board, because Vato looked bad today. So what's going to happen next week?
I don't know what's going on with Davis, but that guy, he cannot time a jam to save his life off the line of scrimmage. Can't seem to keep his feet under him. He had a couple nice tackles and run support today, but man, he looks lost out there right now. He just cannot find his bearings at all.
And when he loses, he gets up and he looks hurt. I don't understand what's going on with him. Is there something that's physically limiting him, or is this just like his natural reaction to being beat? But every time I saw him lose a rep, he gets up slowly. It looks like he may be coming out, but he stays in. I don't know. It just something's off with him. The coverage, especially on these deep crossers, it's a headache and a half because you're a long, fast guy. Technically, you should be able to defend those. You know, you've got long strides. These receivers that are crossing the field like that, you should be able to keep up with them, and your length should help giving you an advantage to play catch up. Recover. But he's losing badly on crossers. So it's gotten to the point now where if his strength is, you know, being a man press cover corner, and he's also now losing in man press, then he's now sort of a liability. And then therein lies my question again. I mean, what do you do about this going into next week? He didn't perform well, so are you going to sit him too?
No, they're not going to sit him. They're going to keep him. But I will, one thing, Michael Davis, good play that stuck out in my mind is the tackle right before halftime on TJ Hawkinson, where they're on the sidelines, kept him in bounds, killed the drive, 0 points. That was a beautiful play. Now, I'm with Craig. Every time he goes down, I think he's about to walk off the game because he looks injured. Also, how are you that fast and trailing so many times? Like, at least he was in position, wouldn't get his head around in time, and they'd be making a reception like right in front of him. But now he's trailing, and he's got the recovery speed, but just not fast enough to keep up with a lot of these guys now, apparently. Yeah, he looked bad today. I will give him that it was a great play right before halftime on Hawkinson, but yeah, he had his issues.
Yeah, he's off balance a lot. Like, just can't seem to keep his feet under him. He misses the jam, and now he's off balance, kind of like windmilling his way, trying to catch his balance. He just can't seem to be in phase or be in position at all. And that kind of affects your scheme. If you're counting on that length now outside to man up with the other team's best receiver and jam and press and keep guys from getting space, and now he's missing the jam,
gets called for a penalty.
Yeah, are you now going to have to play more zone because you can't rely on him to get the jam and stay in phase and press? I mean, it changes how you want to play things.
And as a press man cover corner, you have to have decent change of direction if you're not going to be really good at jamming guys off of the line of scrimmage, and he does not have that. So when he misses and a wide receiver gets a step on him and gets leverage, he can kind of give a two-way go, and then Vato's at a point where he has to guess, and he's almost never going to guess correctly. And if you can get him, you know, to spin like a top, get him going in the wrong direction, or have him open up his hips and then try to turn and run, it's going to take him a while to build that speed up because he's not super agile, very fast in a straight line. But if you get him moving around laterally, it's going to be a problem. And the Vikings saw that, took advantage of it, and that's why you saw him beat on a lot of those crossing routes. And it could be a problem going forward unless you're going to make alterations to your scheme, which, you know, we kind of ask for on a game-to-game basis because that's what game planning is about. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah. All right. Take some questions from Tyler Ardent. What do you all think about the run defense? A lot of East run plays today. They opened the game with 5 straight runs. Got a ton of first downs. Vikings hadn't had a 10-plus run play all season. It took them 2 plays from scrimmage to break that streak immediately. Gave up under 100 yards. And Madison had 93 today. Averaged almost 5 yards per carry. It was not very good today. I know SJD played pretty good in the run game. I thought Thule played pretty good, but for the most part, they weren't good.
Chargers love popping teams cherries, man. It's a thing. They're always the first for something. It's always the defense. It can be scores, yardage yielded. In this case, Vikings were a bottom 5 running game coming into the game, and you know the Chargers apparently are the cure. They're the cure to what ails you. Unfortunately, I said this week 1, and I think a lot of people kind of rolled their eyes at me. Dolphins got away from running the ball because they didn't have to, but earlier on in the game, they were getting some pretty decent chunk runs, and I was concerned about it. I'm like, well, when we run into a team, maybe next week against the Titans, they'll be able to kind of really gash them in the run game. But they held up really good week 2. I just don't understand what changed this week. I mean, I don't think you necessarily had the game plan to stop the run. I'm sure that it's something that was a part of the plan this week, but it wasn't something that they focused on because they just assumed, like most of us, that the Vikings would be in a position where they were going to have to air the ball out. That's their thing. They can't run. They're definitely going to pass. But this could have just been one of those scenarios where they were inviting the run with weak boxes and, playing coverage behind it, and were willing to give that up. So, I mean, it could be that, but I mean, I won't really know until I get a chance to go back and rewatch.
There were a lot of missed tackles at the second level in the run game, a lot, and some at the third level. As well as Gilman played, and he did play well. Like Garrett said, he had a handful of missed tackles in the run game. There were several plays where Murray read a run play perfectly and then overran the play and missed the tackle, either trying to tackle high or just was too aggressive in pursuit, took a bad angle. So they were really struggling to get guys on the ground at the second level and then again at the third level. But just didn't seem like there was much edge setting going on in that game. Didn't really seem like any of the interior guys were holding up all that well outside of Sebastian Joseph Day. They just struggled. I don't think it was a matter of, okay, we're all right with giving up the run, just because that's such a bad offensive line. You wouldn't expect them to be gashing you that way. I mean, the interior of that offensive line, their starting center was out. Both their guards are awful. They have pretty good tackles, but 3/5 of that line is like bottom tier NFL offensive line material. So for them to be pushing guys around and creating the holes they were was kind of alarming.
Yeah, they were really bad today. RJS, are we all done with the Josh Kelly experiment? Is this it? Are we done?
He's not an RB1, man. He's just not. He works well in tandem. As kind of a, I guess, thunder and lightning situation with Eckler, but I was just hoping everyone wasn't going to get overly excited about it. He does not have the vision that you want for someone that you're going to hand the ball off to 20 to 25 times a game. Unfortunately, this is what the Chargers are leaning on. And yeah, it hurts the running game. But today, what really baffled me about it, not just the play of Kelly, is the fact that they were running a ton of outside zone and not nearly enough power. It was almost as if power was not a part of the game plan this week. And I don't understand it against that defensive front, which, by the way, they also had a bottom 5 run defense going into this week as well. You would assume that you would want to attack that. In no part of my mind did I foresee Herbert throwing the ball 47 times. I just assumed that there would be a little bit better of a balance, like using the run to set up the pass. So I was like, okay, maybe he gets off like 32 to 35 attempts. But yeah, 1 point whatever yards per carry for Kelly, and then Spiller getting his 2 touches, which I'm sorry, overshot it. Spiller getting in there for them, I guess, to just say, hey, everybody asked for it. Here you go. Yeah. There are your 2 carries. Can't say we didn't play him. And, aside from that, did Dotson play at all?
No.
Okay. So I'm not sure what the plan was for the run game this week, but it doesn't seem like they had any inkling to come in and run the ball to set up the pass. It just seemed like they were going to be fine being dependent on the run, spreading the defense out with those quick passes, maybe as extensions of the run game and setting up those bigger shots down the field. But yeah, as far as Kelly is concerned, Josh Kelly is exactly who we think Josh Kelly is. He had a very good week 1 and it's tapered off. And I mean, also guys are also really kind of seeing the importance of Austin Eckler. I know a lot of people might feel a way about that, but it's the truth. The guy is very valuable and you're seeing it now.
So this is actually a really good segue for something I noticed during the game. And that is, I want to go back and rewatch the game to make sure that all the numbers are right, because I don't know the exact snap counts, but I think the Chargers have a tell when they're running the ball, when they're passing the ball, and I think it's personnel based. Spiller only ran the ball. He was on the field. It seemed like a lot today. He only ran the ball twice. Kelly, if he was on the field, they basically ran the ball. Spiller seemed like he was in for pass protection a lot. So for me, it seemed like if Spiller's on the field, they're probably going to pass it. If Kelly's on the field, they're probably going to run it. That's what it seemed like watching it live. I'd have to go back and watch and see what the snap counts look like. But it just really seemed like Spiller was just in there for pass protection, which is surprising because it's not something we've seen him do a lot of.
And he was very good today at it.
He had one really bad rep. I think he got a little bit better during the course of the game, but overall he was not great. He was fine, but not particularly good.
See, but
he wasn't
Joshua
a complete
Kelly,
liability.
He was
No,
not
go ahead,
good
Garrett.
today. Joshua Kelly had 11 carries today. So are you saying you think Kelly? Well, he was on the field more than that. If they're just gonna run it with Kelly.
Like I said, I got to go back and look at the numbers to see what the snap counts look like. But it just seemed like if Spiller was on the field, there was no chance they were running the ball.
Yeah.
But of the two of them, Spiller is the one that you would want to use in the passing game as a receiver, as opposed to, having Kelly out there. And Kelly at this point is better in pass pro. I don't know what the plan is for Spiller at this point. I don't think they know what the plan is for Spiller.
I was going to say neither do they.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it seems like they were a little confused on that kind of running back usage. What they're even planning to do with the run game today. Because, they had 30 yards total, and that's behind Herbert's 11 yards rushing, which he's got to do a lot more of, by the way. There were 2 or 3 third downs where he had an open running lane for an easy third down conversion, stayed in the pocket and threw it. Converted for most of it, but we had a couple records today. We know that Keenan had his most receptions today. Which was a franchise record. He had his most receiving yards today. He had his 14th career game with 11 plus receptions, which is a new NFL record. And Justin Herbert completed 40 of 47 passes, which was 85%. And that was the best single game completion percentage of any quarterback with at least 45 pass attempts. They went nuts today.
Can we now stop people out there saying that Justin Herbert needs to do more? What more do you want from him? He played essentially a flawless game, and they still only won by 4.
They want him to stop the run. Correct?
Yeah, apparently. I don't know. What else do you want to ask from him? There are stats out there that prove what he's done as far as being a comeback quarterback. Finishing games off. Would you like to have seen that within the last 2 weeks, scoring touchdowns last week as opposed to a field goal, the last drive in the Dolphins game? I get all of that. But again, you're putting up these type of numbers, you're scoring these points every week. There has to be a greater contribution elsewhere. You can't just say, well, you're paying him all this money, he's got to be the solution. He's not. He looks like a machine, but the guy's not infallible. He has to have some margin for error. It can't be so finite.
Keenan Allen and Justin Herbert are going to break all these records, and all we're going to hear about is Taylor Swift in the press box in Kansas City. That's all we're going to hear about.
Sweet.
I agree with what you're saying, Craig, in the sense that Herbert can't be the only driving force behind wins every week. They can't ask him to be perfect every week and play like a god every week and expect to be successful. They just can't. But I do think, like we talked about last week, I think there's still room for growth in the mental side of his game. Pre-snap reads, adjusting in his post-snap reads, being more willing to let certain throws go, find certain holes in cover 2 and cover 6, things that we saw him do some today, things that we saw him do at times last week, but not consistently. I think as great as his stats are and as phenomenal as he was throwing the ball, for me, the most encouraging part today was just the way he was identifying the blitzes and the way he was handling the pressure, manipulating the pocket, and keeping plays alive so he could make plays with his arm. Because that cover 0 defense, which he saw a lot of today, is something that's given him fits. So to see him handle it as well as he did today was really encouraging. I hope it's something that we continue to see more of. And then, we can start to look into, that level of growth of taking him to the next level in terms of winning games and winning.
I have an objection.
What's that?
We need proof that he's not faking his reads.
Oh yeah. You didn't see that, did you, Jamie?
No, I didn't.
Oh man. So during our show, the TLR roundtable, we found a clip, or somebody put it in the Discord, of a bunch of Dolphins podcasters who said that Justin Herbert is faking his progressions. Like he's not even using his progressions. Like he knows where he's going to go with the ball and throw it there every single time. And anytime he's looking at another receiver, it's just all pretend. Which is by far the worst take I've ever heard in my life when it regards to
it's just as funny today as it was.
All right. So speaking of progression and getting better, let's talk about Quinton Johnston. John Taylor. I don't know if he does. Jonathan's his dad's name, I'm sure. Can you talk about the lack of plan for our first round wide receiver? Obviously referring to Quinton Johnston not getting a lot of run even after Mike Will goes down. Using him sparingly. He had 2 catches today, 11 yards, I believe, or something like that. 10 yards.
10, 11, something like that.
It was 10, my fault. 2 catches, 10 yards for the first round wide receiver.
Yeah, I mean,
Jordan Addison, 6 catches, 52 yards. Throw that in the same game, but
I mean, if Addison was a Charger, he'd be having the same stat lines as QJ, I think.
Oh, okay.
I just think it's the way they don't have a plan for him. They said they did. They said they wanted him to be CeeDee Lamb.
CeeDee Lamb, yep. Mm-hmm.
But that's not happening. So I don't know what they think they're doing, but you spend a first round pick on a wide receiver, somebody who obviously adds yak ability, who has the ability to stretch the field. He offers things that the other wide receivers in the room do not offer, something that your offense needs, and you're still not using him. And when you do use him, you're not using him properly. It's exceedingly frustrating. They must be like really disappointed with what they got in that pick already if he can't see the field and they can't find ways to get him the football. I will say that he was on the field a little bit after Mike left, and I do think that at times Herbert, as great as he was, he can be a little bit too locked in on Keenan. And there were some opportunities, I thought, to push the ball down the field to QJ, and he came back and threw the ball to Keenan underneath him. But having said that, they clearly don't have a game plan for him. They're not trying to find ways to get the ball in his hands. You know, we're not seeing – they're still running those stupid screens to Mike. And, you know, this is what, year 6? We know what this guy can do and can't do at this point. Why are we still force feeding him screens? You know, give him the slants. What's that?
Or that end around we got last week.
Any of it. Just stop. Just stop. If you want to run an end around, run it to QJ. If you want to run a smoke screen, run it to QJ. You know, give him some slants, give him some digs, find some opportunities to get in the ball in space and run with the football. That's what he does well. Why are we not doing this? It's really frustrating. I don't get it. For more to pound the table for him and not understand how to use him or not be willing to use him, it's bad. It's a bad look.
Mm-hmm.
It almost feels like they're screwing with us because now it's 2 weeks in a row. I don't know if you guys noticed this. They've schemed the ball to him early. I think he caught the first pass from Herbert last week.
He did.
And then this week he had 2 receptions in the first couple snaps. Then he just disappears for the rest of the game. I don't understand. It's like you don't want to give him a chance to warm up. You get him out there. You're targeting him on these plays. So you're attempting to get him the ball then, and then he just doesn't exist for the rest of the game. And I don't understand. Like, you had a plan coming into the game to get him involved, but did that only extend to the first drive? And then after that, okay, kid, you had a good one. Come take a seat. I don't understand the logic behind any of this.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. We're going to see coming in this next week, though. And by the way, speaking of misreads, he missed Mike wide open.
That backside slant.
Yeah, that was a good one. Sean Clayton gave us a little something regarding Herbo sneak. Keenan Allen said that Herbert had the option for the sneak, chose not to. Herbert's decision because of the defensive look he got. That was apparently in Keenan's presser after the game. So they had it, but Herbert went with the run play.
The way they lined up for that play, I mean, you can almost tell when a sneak is coming by the alignment, the way that the quarterback positions himself under the center. They're almost always leaning, like they're under center trying to create that momentum. Yep. I didn't see that. So, I mean, it's curious that, you know, if that's the case, then you have to take the player's word for it. But at no point did it look like there was an option for a QB sneak there.
All right. I think there's no better way to end this podcast than to say, we on this podcast have talked about for years since the beginning that we will never blame referees for a win or a loss, but that doesn't mean we can't talk shit. How bad were these refs today? Because they were absolutely god awful on multiple occasions. We talked about the fumble. They blew that whistle way too early. That should have absolutely been a fumble. They did not stop his progress. He's still fighting for yards. Gilman absolutely ripped that ball loose. That's a fumble. Chargers should have had that ball. That's one.
The unnecessary roughness on Raheem Lane was horseshit. It was awful. He hit him in the back. He hit a live receiver in the back. What's he supposed to do? Pull up and let him run with the ball?
Yeah.
That was such a bad call.
Yep. Derwin's penalty was pretty ticky-tack. Tried to lead with his show. It felt like Kenneth Murray pulled his head down, and then his head's going down as Derwin's trying to lead with his shoulder and hit him.
Didn't he lead? I thought Derwin led with his helmet, didn't he? I thought the crown of his helmet was down.
It's the angles are really weird. And before I say this, it feels like Derwin is like the new Joey Bosa with this stuff.
He's
now.
getting targeted. Absolutely.
They're targeting him. No, it looked almost. So here's actually my question. If in fact what he did was a penalty, then the play that Mike Williams got hurt on was essentially the exact same hit, and they just let it fly. The receivers, coming downhill, breaks a tackle, or someone misses a tackle. I don't remember who it was. Maybe it was Murray, not sure. And on his way down, he ducks his head. And you can see Derwin try to adjust to turn to the side to lead with his shoulder. But if the ball carrier's head is down and you're attempting to lead with your shoulder, your natural reaction is going to be to duck to make the tackle. You don't tackle with your head up. You don't tackle with your chest. More often than not, you lead with your face mask, just not the crown of your helmet. It's almost impossible to not make contact with a ball carrier whose head is ducked down when you have to also lower your shoulder. So it's not that he led with his helmet. His shoulder pad hit the receiver's helmet. And I'm trying to figure out, well, what are you calling that? Are you calling that targeting to the head with the shoulder? Because he had no other options to make the tackle unless you expect him to run up with his chest, absorb the tackle, and allow the guy to run through him. I don't understand what constitutes a personal foul now or roughing. And it's just, they make this up as they go, and they're not consistent in the way that they're calling it. That non-penalty on Mike Williams on the play he was injured was egregious. Like Harrison ducked his head into Mike Williams and made contact with him. It was actually worse than the Derwin hit, and they had absolutely no problem with it at all. With regard to the non-fumble that was actually a fumble, they threw the freaking blue bean bag. Like the ref threw the bean bag indicating that it was a fumble. Yeah. They didn't blow the play dead. I didn't hear a whistle. I mean, I know it's a stadium, it's loud, but I'd never heard a whistle blow. If his progress was stopped, then I have to wonder, in that same scenario, if, say, an offensive lineman got behind him and started pushing, would they have allowed it? Because the only reason he would have progress then is because he's being helped. And those plays happen all the time. It's almost as bad as saying, like, last week, who was it? Everett, that really big play that he made. Well, you could blow the whistle as soon as his progress was stopped, but he also broke like 2 or 3 tackles. I mean, just because his feet stopped for a half a second didn't mean the play was over. It just feels like they're picking and choosing where they want to do these, but that was a completely horse crap call. And it's really making the game of football difficult to watch, but also the fact that these calls are essentially affecting the outcome of some of these games. Now, luckily it didn't, end up in a loss for the Chargers today, but it very well could have. And something has to be done about this. The referees have to be held accountable. I mean, whatever happens to them, I know that they review these calls and stuff like that, but whatever penalties get levied against them, this has to be situated. They have to fix this because it's not consistent across the board. And if you're not going to call it the same way all the time, then don't do it. Just don't.
It's the consistency thing for sure. Because if they're going to call it, then be consistent with it and call it both ways throughout the league, and you won't have an issue. But I think the most important point is Derwin is absolutely being targeted now, and he needs to just let up a little bit and stop being so aggressive, because it's 2 weeks in a row where he's just going not head hunting, but he's throwing his body around a little bit, and the referees are looking at him now.
But here's the problem, though, is you can't ask a guy to let up and play at anything less than 100%, or he's going to get hurt.
Well, of course, but he also doesn't need to be like throwing his helmet around like he has the last 2 weeks.
That's fair, but I'm just saying, like, I guess I don't know where you draw the line. Like, he's playing hard, he's trying to make a play. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know where you
As
draw
a
the line.
defender, what are you supposed to do? Like, your job is to stop the opposition from progressing, scoring, moving down the field. If you have an opportunity to create a play that potentially jars a ball loose or something like that that aids your defense, they're taking that away from you. I mean, it's an offensive centric game. I get it. You know, they want to see teams score a bunch of points. You know, girls dig the long ball, all that crap. I understand, but seriously, man, like at some point, like Jamie said, there has to be some sort of like where do you draw the line?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I totally agree.
Go ahead. I was going to say the PI call on Keenan felt pretty ticky-tack. It felt like they were just kind of hand fighting, and then they called the penalty. And then there was a play where it was a false start on Parham or something, and he didn't even move.
Yeah. Wow.
Dude, he was like a statue. I don't know what that call was.
Maybe he sneezed or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I think what I had a hard time with was, you know, if that hit on Derwin is a penalty, I think there were 2 or 3 hits. They might start calling those things on Gilman, because Gilman had 2 or 3 hits that were way more egregious than Derwin's, where he's leading with his helmet and he's hitting guys in the head with his helmet.
Harrison Smith today too.
Harrison Smith was doing it too. So
constantly today.
They're clearly targeting Derwin. They're clearly targeting Joey with late hits. They have been for years. So I don't know. I don't know where you go from here, because they're obviously looking for these things with certain players. It's not an across the board thing. It's a reputation thing, and you're going to get dinged whether you deserve it or not.
I was certain that pass breakup on Hockenson there in the fourth quarter by Low, he was going to draw a flag. That hit looked perfectly fine, but I just felt like, oh, he hit him too hard. A flag's coming. It's just what it feels like now.
The one on the last drive?
Yes.
He played through him. He didn't actually hit him.
Well, but live, the contacts, like the way that it was super bang bang. It was quick and it was violent. And I'm now conditioned to the point to where if I see a very, very hard hit, I just expect a flag to come out. And that's what's concerning me now. Mm-hmm. And I think the players hate that too, because they almost always get up after they make a big play. You can just kind of see them pause for a second to look for the flag, expecting it. And that makes them have to play tentative. And if that's the direction we're going in, then football is going to become very, very difficult to watch.
I think I actually saw Gilman's pass break up a little differently than you, Craig, because to me, what I saw was him playing through Hockenson to play the football, and it actually looked like he tried not to hit him. And I think that's why he didn't get a call. The contact didn't look that violent to me. It looked weird because of the way he played through him to get to the ball, but he was clearly breaking on the football and trying to make a play on the ball. He was not trying to hit Hockenson, at least not in my opinion.
I agree with
in
Craig.
The replay,
live. On the replay, you could see he played through the shoulder into the ball. But live, it felt like such a big hit because there's so much contact there that I felt like it was going to be a penalty too. It was a great no call. I'm glad they swallowed the whistle.
Fantastic play.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we did it. We've done it. We're over an hour here.
I think we need to say one more thing.
Okay, go ahead, Jamie.
One more real quick thing. I think we need to thank Kirk Cousins.
Oh, thank Craig. Craig and Kirk Cousins. Craig's eyes lit up. He's like, "Oh, what did I do? Did I do something nice?"
We need to thank Kirk Cousins, and we need to thank Kevin O'Connell for completely mismanaging the clock at the end of that game and costing them a chance to win that game.
Yeah,
because that was a huge. They wasted like 20 seconds after that second to last play. So that was a huge play that it forced them to speed up. And it put the Chargers in a position to make a play at the end of the game. So we owe them a big thank you, because O'Connell, in my opinion, is the only one who managed the end of the game worse than Staley did.
Definitely. Yeah, that they wasted a precious time there at the end of the game. All right. Well, anyway, thank you everybody for joining us. I know we're a little bit later than after the game, but a ton of you came on and we appreciate it. Thank you so much. I'm at Garrett. Jamie's at lightning_round. Don't forget Craig at top_flight, FLYT, the number 3. And we will see you next time.
Thanks, everybody.
Jamie.
Salute.